I can't believe the only opening that I have for this video is just sing the Zelda theme song. Okay, I guess how that's how we're starting this video. Bum bum. No, that's too much. Uh da 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 da. Hey there, Seuss here, with a time lapse of a Legend of Zelda print that I made while I look back at Tears of the Kingdom, with its first year anniversary not being too far behind us. I know my YouTube channel here is still in its infancy. Insert little baby infant noise here. And if there's one thing that I want to get across is how absolutely insane I am about The Legend of Zelda. So first off, I want to talk about this piece first before I fill your ears with all of my opinions. The initial inspiration for this piece was an illustration of Princess Zelda with some leftover Zonai dragon features from this artist on Twitter. I really enjoy seeing folks take on a more Zonai dragon-esque Princess Zelda, so I wanted to do my own rendition on it, but with a more darker twist. Alright, to start off this print, I drew out a rough thumbnail that has the general vibe of what I'm trying to achieve. I'd then take a photo of that and then bring it into Procreate so I can start fine-tuning it. I will usually do about 2 to 3 passes on a sketch before I move on to the line art part. I like using a different brush for when I'm sketching than when I use for inking. It helps me see the final lines a lot clearer without having to consistently turn the layers on and off. If you know, you know. In the beginning of the sketching phase, I try to get all the basic shapes looking good before I really start diving into the details, like facial expressions and clothing. Drawing the costumes and expressions are my favorite part of the drawing process, but I make sure not to wimp out on a strong, proportional foundation to then draw on top of. After the delicious line art stage, you can see that I do a very simple value study with the various green tones. I wanted the lighting in this piece to make it look like it was taking place somewhere in the depths, and in order to understand what colors I needed to achieve that effect, I used a bunch of green tones as the base. From that initial color, I could use the color picker as almost like a slider to move that green tone to the actual colors of the characters, without it looking too out of place. Once I get all the flat colors down, I start rendering everything and really just start to push the intensity of the colors in certain places. You'll see that later in the video. At this point, it's a bunch of small details that really push the piece to its finished look. And that's my process. That's how I pretty much take all of my illustrations, from a small little sketch in my sketchbook to a finished illustration that I can turn into prints or stickers or keychains, or I could put it on leggings. I totally forgot that, like, you can do that now. We are living in the 21st century. Alright, now before I really start rambling off here, I do want to throw in my cute little like and subscribe moment. Like I said earlier, my channel is still quite the newbie here, so just one like, comment, and subscribe really goes a long way. Making comics and illustrations is truly my passion in life, and I can't wait to find the people that are just as excited about the work that I create as I am. You can of course find more of my work on my Insta and TikTok. Oh, and I have an Etsy shop too if you like any of the art you see here and want to bring it into your own home. Not surprising that most of the work there is Zelda related. Believe me, you have no idea how much this series has consumed my brain. And if you really want to find out, then buckle up, Buttercup. What I really enjoyed when working on this piece was being able to design my own version of the Zonai-ified Zelda, but make it look a little bit more darker. I wanted this piece to convey a darker ending than what actually happens in the game. I really just wanted to explore how the dragonification? It's a weird word. Basically, eating the forbidden fruit gummy. You know when we all saw the sacred stones for the first time. I don't know about you, but the first time I saw that in game, I looked over at my friend at the time and said, "I want to eat that." Cut to later where I'm fucking watching Zelda eat the forbidden fruit gummy, and then she just, turns into a big beautiful dragon. But anyways, I digress. I wanted to explore how that could have affected Princess Zelda even after the curse was broken, to further illustrate how and why it was considered a taboo. The way draconification was introduced in the game as a form of taboo was a really interesting and rather dark concept when you start to think about it. And the Zelda games are absolutely no stranger when it comes to writing some rather eerie concepts. However, it wasn't surprising that the developers decided to have her change back to completely normal, as if nothing happened. And the same goes for Link too. It was even more disappointing to see how there was no scarring or discoloration on his arm during the final cutscenes. It was a complete missed opportunity to show visually how much these characters have changed since the start of the game. Plus, think about how gratifying it would be for the player, regardless if this is your first Zelda game or if you're a longtime fan like myself, to see how these characters have changed from this journey. It hurts knowing how much the experience of this game could have been that just more emotionally impactful if the Zelda team just actually had, competent writers. The ending gives off the impression that this was some generic, phoned-in, happily ever after. And that's strangely not the case for most of the Zelda games, especially the 3D Zelda games. Yes, all the games have a quote-unquote happy ending, but there's more to it than just seeing the characters reunite and then goes back to the status quo. Like with Ocarina of Time, which this game takes a lot of inspiration from in terms of the plot, I might add. Also, spoiler warning for a game that's over 25 years old, by the way. At the end of Ocarina of Time, Princess Zelda sends Link back to his original timeline so he can warn the Kingdom of Hyrule about Ganondorf's evil plan, but also so he can go back and properly enjoy his childhood. This ending has more of a melancholy feel, with Zelda sending Link back to the original timeline, essentially without him asking, when he still has the memories from this new adult timeline, therefore being a different person than he was at the start of the game. This is a really weird concept when you really start to dissect it, being forced to grow up quickly all of a sudden, and having to save the world, and then all of that having being retconned in an instant. I suppose the modern day equivalent to that would be graduating college, and then the next day you wake up, and it's your first day of middle school. I don't know about you, but that sounds like my absolute worst nightmare. However, in Tears of the Kingdom, the ending cutscenes show little indication as to what's next for Link and Zelda. Do they continue their work researching the Zonai ruins and rebuilding Hyrule? That really wouldn't make any sense, since Zelda got to see the Zonai culture firsthand and actually became a part of the history that founded the kingdom they live in today. With the true ending with Minoru, there is a sense that the sages and Link have formed some sort of alliance akin to the original champions from Breath of the Wild. If that's true, then what are their goals? What's next for these characters? How has Hyrule changed because of the upheaval, and now with Zelda's return, what are they going to carry on with? Especially now that Hyrule has basically been flooded with all of these Zonai ruins, are they just gonna magically bippity-boppity-boo them out of there like they did with all of the Sheikah technology? Just so many weird loose ends that the writing team just left everywhere. I know the Zelda team has stated that they're excited to start from scratch again when creating the next title, and frankly, I don't blame them. When you look at it, the team has been working within this version of Hyrule for over a decade now. I'm sure some folks in the team are grateful to move on to something new and different, but that's no excuse for leaving such a blank slate of an ending when the audience has also spent just as much a significant amount of time with its world and its characters. Sure, it may not be nearly as long as the developers have spent, but still, 7 years is a good chunk of time. It's just disappointing that they could have included a small little tidbit as to what's next for these heroes, especially for Link and Princess Zelda. In the game, we see clues as to what their lives were like between Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, but that's clearly not what their lives are going to be like that after the fact, once they've returned after this perilous journey. It's unrealistic to say that these two went back to living their domestic co-op after going through another near-death experience for the second time. Overall, the ending just felt generic and careless. I know the team could have done better since I've seen it done before in previous games. And while I do adore Tears of the Kingdom just as much as Breath of the Wild, I couldn't help but be disappointed in the story of the game overall. Looking back at it now, I feel like the Zelda theorists got a little too ambitious with their predictions when looking at all the promotional material. That's just Zelda theorists in a nutshell, though. When I first started uncovering Zelda's memories in the game myself, I was so confused by the story simply because it wasn't what I was anticipating. Yes, there's a lot of retconning with the lore and the history brought up in these cutscenes, but time and time again, these developers have said that in interviews and in articles that the story is just not their main focus, and they don't want it to get in the way of creating a game that is fun to play. And if you don't know Nintendo's philosophy when it comes to creating games, allow me to share. Nintendo's priority when creating games is to make games that feel fun to play. They've never been creating games that have these high-end, show-stopping graphics or follow trends that everyone in the industry are following. Their goal has always been about creating games that are just plain fun to play, that question the methods as to what can make a game fun and what can constitute as a video game. Everything else is just secondary or made to aid in that experience. Don't get me wrong, Tears of the Kingdom is an absolute delight of a game. I love finding all the little changes that they added to Hyrule from Breath of the Wild. It was exciting to go to each town and see how the characters I got to know in the previous game have changed since Breath of the Wild. The entire game did a wonderful job of blending together the excitement of discovering something new alongside the comfort of returning to a place of familiarity and seeing old friends. Plus, the added layers of both the sky areas and the depths were a great way to expand upon what was already there. I also believe that these areas were kind of loosely thrown together since they all have the same level of sameness, no matter where you are in these locations. I know a lot of other commentators have already spoken about this ad nauseum, but I just wanted to touch on it briefly just to share my 2 cents on it. I still find the concepts that they brought into these areas to be really engaging, like finding the different Yiga hideouts in the depths and unlocking a new blueprint? Is that what they're called? Schemes? I think they're just called blueprints. And the many dungeon-like islands that can be found throughout the sky. It's just... As someone who spent most of their life obsessing about this game series, it hurts to see how much potential this game had story-wise, and they just threw it all out in the garbage. With them bringing back Ganondorf, the indications of Demise's curse, Zelda's entire character arc in Breath of the Wild, the mysteries with the Zonai people, there was so much to pull from, and they just didn't. From what I've saw, it seems like the developers didn't want the new players to be confused with the important story elements from the previous game, which I guess I can understand, but it is such a pet peeve of mine when developers of any kind of media act like their audience won't be able to handle complex storytelling and fear that it will drive down their sales. It's such a laughable excuse. Zelda is one of the biggest game franchises, and you want to tell me that they're afraid of turning off new fans with pre-established lore? For me, the story is what draws me back into the Zelda series time and time again. I don't believe that it should overshadow the gameplay, of course, but it can definitely be an important feature. Like with Twilight Princess. Most of the story revolves around Midna's character arc. With each area/dungeon that you complete, it's like unlocking the next chapter in that story. This acts as motivation for the player to continue on to the next area, looking to see what happens next in this story. I understand that with Tears of the Kingdom's open-ended play structure that it wouldn't be as easy to recreate this experience, but it was absolutely possible with the Dragon Tears quest. And why wouldn't you want your player to be curious about the franchise's lore? Wouldn't that just encourage the player to discover more about this series? Maybe buy the other games? See what else it has to offer? I don't know. The writing overall just feels very cheap. And I'm not asking for a best-selling novel here. Just for the development team to stop going back and forth on whether or not they want to give a shit about developing the world in a consistent, concise way. It honestly ruins the immersion for me, and I really hope this trend doesn't follow through with the next entry in the series. Zelda has the legacy of being that fantasy game. I just wish the team would treat the story with a little bit more importance. From being hyped up from the trailer to seeing what the actual plot of the game is, I can't help but also feeling like I was a little bit gaslit. Again, I'm aware that the Zelda timeline isn't the best example of world building, but I've been invested in this since I was just a little kid. I've watched how the story has been developing since Ocarina of Time, from the Wind Waker and the other DS titles, to Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, Link Between Worlds, and even Breath of the Wild. There was some loose thread connecting all of these games together, and as a devoted fan, it was incredibly rewarding to find all of these loose threads and being able to tie them together. It was like the Zelda team was putting them there because they wanted its fans to put all the pieces together. Anyways, I do plan on making another video in the future where I go more in depth as to why I believe the Zelda team should put more TLC into their story. Anyways, thank you guys for staying until the end of this video and enduring my Zelda monologue. Once again, please leave a like and comment if you enjoyed the video. I'm sure that you can tell that I really enjoy making videos like this, so any feedback will go a long way, I promise. That's all I got for now, so I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!